As an interesting aside, talking to real people in my civilian life as a parent and citizen, I noticed a number of people have asked me whether death taxes are going to emerge out of this summit. There's always internet underbellies rummaging around that we may not necessarily have line of sight to, which is spreading this kind of disinformation, this political disinformation. So keep a weather eye out for that one.
I will just point out that's as close as David has come to being in a focus group and saying, as a working mother.
I feel like that was a very gendered analysis. Shocked that would come from you.
He's not really shocked.
The presenting sponsor for Socially Democratic is Dunn Street. Dunn Street is a campaign agency that specialises in community organising. We only work with people who want to build power to make the world a better place. And if you want to create change in 2025, then hit us up at dunnstreet.com.au. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members as well. And you can join our community for free or for as little as $1.50 a month. And you too can help support this podcast. All paid members receive a welcome gift. So if you have recently signed up, please check your inbox for a message from our producer asking for your shipping address, because without that, then we can't send you your merch. And finally, today's episode is brought to you by Maurice Blackburn Lawyers. For over a century, Maurice Blackburn has stood up for fairness, championing the rights of everyday Australians and shaping landmark legal reforms. Today, they're harnessing new technologies to make justice more accessible, more efficient, and more responsive to the needs of modern Australia. All right, let's get on with today's episode. We are taping this one on what day is it today?
Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday? Yeah, it is Wednesday. We're taping this one on a Wednesday, but this is going up next week anyway. But so I need to let you know that if anything happens between now and when this goes up, that's not our fault. We're all both busy next week. We're taping this one on the Lands of the Laundry People, and it is our monthly catch up with David and Jessie, the Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone. David Feeney, first of all, to you, congratulations this month. It's official. You are now a doctor. You got dressed up in your smock. You put a hat on. And you got a piece of paper. Mazel tov to you.
Thank you very much. My name is David, but you can call me Doctor.
Will you be handing out prescriptions now?
I've got a little badge that says David Feeney, never lost a patient.
Wonderful. Great to see.
If someone on an aeroplane says we need a doctor, I'm going to put my hand up, rush forward and start explaining to the stricken passenger about how ancient Carthage worked.
Good. Jessie McCrone on ABC Radio Television this week, spruiking the wonderful suburban rail loop. Did a formidable job.
I was going to talk about how I passed some anti-phishing training this week. It took me 8 minutes, and now I feel equipped to deal with cyber attacks.
Oh, right.
So, similar level of academia that we've achieved.
So it's not you wandering around wharfs trying to wrestle fishermen to the ground.
No, PH.
Anti-fishing.
PH.
Right, okay, gotcha.
Excellent. Okay, the headlines.
But anyway, yes, I was also on the ABC. Thank you for noticing, Stephen. I appreciate
You're welcome.
that.
Very supportive I am. The headlines this week, first of all, and let's, so I'll just read them out, just remind you two how we're going to do this, and then we'll get into them. The Federal Court's landmark decision in the case between the Transport Workers Union of Australia and Qantas. It's a ruling that goes to the heart of workers' rights and corporate accountability. Second of all, Prime Minister Albanese and Treasurer Jim Chalmers held a major economic roundtable in Canberra this month. It's Comic-Con for economic policy nerds, and the forum will consider how government think about growth, productivity, and the future of work. And finally, the Albanese government's historic move to formally recognise a Palestinian state was announced this month. It's a decision that has reverberated through foreign policy circles and our domestic political debate, and also prompted the Kurds, the Assyrians, and the Druze communities to ask, where next, right? Okay, let's go to unpack some of these stories, but let's start off with the big one, which was Qantas versus the TWU. For any of you that weren't following this, during the pandemic, Qantas outsourced nearly 1,700 ground handling jobs. That's the baggage handlers, cleaners, ramp workers, saying at the time that it needed to cut costs just to survive. We'll come back to that in a minute. The TWU then took them to court, arguing the real motivation wasn't just money, but an attempt to sideline unionised workers and weaken their bargaining power. And the federal court has agreed with the TWU, ruling that Qantas has acted illegally when it acts those jobs. And the judge, Michael Lee, no relation to the MP, and I think, said Qantas breached the Fair Work Act by targeting workers for being union members and trying to exercise their rights. David Feeney, to you, as a former federal industrial officer of the Transport Workers Union with a 100% win record, first of all, would you have taken this case, and would you have thought you were going to win?
Well, Josh Bornstein from Maurice Blackburn, who of course was the lead solicitor on this case, I think has said that it was a remarkable victory, and while of course he took on the case, he wasn't confident that it was going to win, and it's turned into just an outstanding series of victories for the trade union movement. It was a great Qantas atrocity, and it has been a part of the story of how Qantas really has decayed quite dramatically over the last few years in public support and public sentiment towards it. It's a spectacular win, and full marks to the Transport Workers Union doing their job and doing it so aggressively and successfully. Airports were, hubs for trade unions with a unionised workforce that was able to organise itself and protect its wages and conditions very effectively for a very long time. And Alan Joyce and Qantas have done everything they can to crack that. And this is part of the, if you'll excuse the pun, the fight back. It's trade unions organising effectively and delivering great results. So a great win for the TWU and for Maurice Blackburn, and congratulations to them all. It's a sign that even in the most adverse of conditions, unions can organise effectively to bring justice to where it belongs.
Justice Michael Lee said, and I quote, "It will send a message to Qantas and other well-resourced employers that not only will they face potential significant penalties for the breach of the Act, but those penalties will be provided to trade unions to resource them to fulfil their statutory roles as enforcers of the Fair Work Act." Jessie, this sort of sets out an important precedent for corporate accountability and limits union busting in Australia, right? This is pretty huge.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And I think that I didn't have on my bingo card that Justice Lee full report filled with things like biblical references, the French Revolution was referenced, like the amount of Shakespeare that featured in this finding. I didn't necessarily think this is where the revolution was going to begin for working people in this country, but here we are. I think that he does a very good job in his ruling in outlining the reasons for why this money has gone to the TWU, and in some ways protected the union movement in future if there are similar findings in getting some of that recognition. So he said that these penalties, like, who do I give them to? The company deserves them for the way they've behaved. Who does it make sense to go to? The workers have had their claims settled through a different process. I will give $40 million to be distributed in some way, and there'll be a further discussion about how that happens. But $50 million of this will go to the people who took the risk to actually prosecute this against the odds. It could go to the federal government, but frankly, the federal government have done nothing to assist in this case, so they don't deserve the earnings. So the TWU invested $10 million, I think, at least in legal fees, not to mention the time and effort and just strategic focus on this case. And what the judge has said is, you deserve the upside for this incredible risk you have taken in prosecuting this case. And I think that means a couple of things for the union movement. One, it shows that their role in protecting workers is part of the system and should be part of the system.
It's a statutory role, isn't it?
Yeah. And it shows their institutional role in that and how important it is. The second thing it does, or it could do, the impact could be, is that unions may see that union density is not one of the only metrics to use to prosecute a case. If there is this kind of possible upside, what is to stop the missos from looking at a low density areas like Hospo, where there are big corporations that are running the employment system, of mounting this kind of case. Because often in the past, and you two will know this far better than I, density has been such an informing position to the strategy of unions. It has been, are we going to increase density by taking this case? Do we have the density to actually withdraw labour here? Whereas if this momentous case kind of rolls out across the system, there is incentive to unions to do it when they may only have 3 members.
There's a couple of things to remember about this particular case too that make it so egregious. These were sort of over 1,800 workers who were sacked during COVID.
Yeah.
So they were sacked at a particular moment of vulnerability for them, and which sort of adds insult to injury, I think. Mm. And there was a lovely bit of phraseology there from Justice Lee where he said, well, Qantas is sorry, but I think it's the wrong kind of sorry. They're sorry they got caught.
Yeah.
And pointed out that throughout this case, Qantas have run an aggressive defence and insisted that there was no wrongdoing. At no point until, sometime after the finish have they said, sorry for their actions, which were, I think, by any measure, by any pub test, just absolutely ruthlessly unreasonable.
Mm. And adding to that, just build on that, David, he also criticised Vanessa Hudson, who at the time was the CFO of Qantas, and she's now taken over as the top dog. He criticised her decision to not come and testify in court. And I just think the way that Qantas has handled this in the courtroom has been appalling. And it's only now that they've got their fingers really burnt that they're showing some sort of expression of contrition. And
because they have bigger brand problems, right? I mean, this is only one brick in a wall of public unhappiness with Qantas and their performance.
And the real question is, though, will this change Qantas's behaviour? There is an argument. Part of the reason Vanessa got the top job is because of her cost-saving measures that impressed. Not that I was in the board meetings, but that is one telling of the story, that her behaviour during COVID really allowed Qantas to shed a lot of operational costs, and this is part of that. And so it'll be interesting to see whether the culture actually does change after a finding like this.
And
remember, Qantas has got its hand out for public money whenever they run into turbulence. So these aren't, these are mendicant companies when the season suits them.
The response by the sort of financial reporting end of the media I thought was interesting as well. We've got a comment from one of our listeners, which I'll go to in a moment. But just to remind folks that in 2023, the airline delivered a record $2.47 billion profit as it emerged from the pandemic after they'd made an argument that they were, we needed to cut costs to survive.
They're 11 weeks away from insolvency was the claim.
And then in 2024, they posted $2.1 billion. And they're about to, later this month, update there for 2025. But in February, they reported $1.39 billion in pre-tax profit for 6 months between July and December last year. Like, they're doing okay. And the fact that they were making a cost-saving argument at the time is disgusting. And Cameron, one of our listeners I think Cameron is in Canberra, he said, Robin Ironside of the Australian, his headline, Qantas unions payout slammed for framing the TW being awarded the $50 million by Justice Lee in the case against Qantas as a dangerous precedent, funding a shakedown of corporate Australia, citing Andrew McCullough from the ACCI. Never mentioned that the total fine was still less than the amount Qantas saved by breaking the law in the first place, and the role unions like the TW have in holding them to account on blatant attacks of workers' dignity. And Cameron goes on to say, as a former ground handler myself, I'm so relieved that this saga is over and grateful that the TW have done an amazing job in getting this result. And in a lot of the political discussion out of this, apart from what the union's always been saying and what Justice Lee's been saying, no one's talking about the impact that it had on the workers. The fallout of it is, this is a terrible precedent within the business world and what can happen here. But wait a minute, let's just stop and just talk about actually how this impacted on workers during the pandemic. It was disgusting.
Yeah, workers who found out they'd lost their job through an announcement over the intercom,
Yeah. Just
yes.
terrible.
Terrible. I mean, as long as you don't work for Qantas, fly with Qantas, or engage with Qantas, it's okay.
Which is a very easy thing to do in this country.
Yeah, exactly.
Michael Caine, the National Secretary, must be absolutely thrilled. He got asked, what are you going to do with the 50 million? The hesitation would be like, I'm going to Vegas, baby. But no, he said, obviously, we'll invest it more into continuing to fight for our workers wherever we can, which is...
Yeah, I think that there is an argument for setting up a fund, taking half the outcome of this and looking for other cases to run. I think that it's been hugely successful, and other unions will be paying attention to this. And it'll be interesting to see how the SDA case plays with Maccas not necessarily as a result. This is a case they've been running for some time, but hopefully there is more attention paid to cases like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully it can fund better, stronger, tougher organising.
Yeah, absolutely. To increase the density.
Okay, let's talk about Economic Reform Roundtable.
Why, Stephen? No one in the media is.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But, so obviously there's this...
Treasury's already released the findings, haven't they?
There's this economic forum happening in Canberra this week about making the economy more productive, to lift living standards. Some of the things on the table for discussion, the NDIS as well as defence. Keen to get your thoughts on that one, David. Debt costs, health and aged care.
On the NDIS, David. He's keen on your thoughts on the NDIS.
Yeah. Will be sort of some things to be discussed. Now, one of the things I am interested in, and this is a historical thing as well, obviously, and David, you'll remember this, back in 1985, the Hawke government, led by its treasurer, then Paul Keating, held this national tax summit where industry came together in Canberra to discuss tax reform. And if you've seen the Philip Chubb documentary series, Labour in Power, and I recommend everyone, if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. It's fantastic. The story of the summit wasn't tax reform, but how Hawke threw Keating under a bus. 40 years later, we're having the same sort of conversation. We're back in Canberra with a national summit on economic reform. And it's just been funny to watch a lot of the media reporting of trying to play out these tensions between the Prime Minister and the Treasurer over what can and can't be discussed. And that being said, though, that both the leader and the Treasurer have been at pains to show unity. Obviously, a lot of the optics and the photos of them sitting together and all that kind of stuff. I just want to get first one from you, David. Have we learned anything about the relationship that exists between the Prime Minister and the Treasurer in the lead up to this major economic forum?
Well, no, it's exactly as you say. I mean, they're desperate to try and have a Hawke-Keating replay, and neither Albo or Chalmers are giving them that opportunity. There is no division between the Prime Minister and the Treasurer. The Treasurer has obviously had the key running in terms of speaking to the summit and speaking to the media about the summit and setting its parameters and guidelines. But he's obviously done that in close concert with the Prime Minister. And I think his main challenge is just to get the Prime Minister to keep talking about it and not other things, which is something we'll come to. But the main thing is that it's just a non-story. I think the bigger challenge for the summit is, as Jessie kind of intimated a moment ago, is keeping everybody focused on it. But in terms of searching for a fight, between a reformist treasurer and a conservative prime minister a la 1983 or whatever it is, forget it. That's just not the story of the moment. It's just a story that the media are keen to have because it's easier than talking about productivity.
Well, you would also argue that, partly the challenge with talking productivity now is how the participants have engaged with the platform. So I think the Productivity Commission, despite the fact that I don't agree with everything they've put forward, have been very forward-leaning in saying, this is our agenda, this is what we want to talk about, here's some ideas that we think should be discussed. And it has generated some conversation. ACTU similarly have put out some positions about what they would want to talk about. I have found the business community reasonably lacking in having some sort of cohesive view or proposal to talk about productivity. There's sort of bits around the edges that different sort of business leaders are pushing, but it is hard to have a proper debate about these things if people haven't got their houses in order ahead of time to sort of be like, this is kind of the things that the business community want out of it. This is what the unions want out of it. And this is what the Productivity Commission think is a good idea. I think that would have set the scene for a better and more productive productivity debate.
The Teals shouldn't be forgotten here. I mean, the Teals have come out and suggested that the GST be raised and that we tax gas and coal heavier. So in summary, the Teals are suggesting that people who don't vote for them and companies that don't donate to them should be punished.
Yep.
And that's poor people and coal and gas. But
that's okay. We're going to give people $3,000 when we increase their food bills by another 10%.
And it's just another interesting example of how the Teals Liberal Light are sort of such an attractive siren song to Green voters, because that's punishing people who don't vote for you and companies that don't donate to you is the Greens' modus operandi as well, and the Teals and the Greens have got a lot of common ground here.
Agree.
The other sort of narrative coming out of this is the things that won't be talked about, and I don't know whether this is true or not, because I'm not a policy expert in this area at all, but I just got a sense that things that we're not talking about was, the favourable tax breaks for negative gearing and capital gains discounts, and that invest for businesses and investors, not reinvesting that money back into more productive parts of the economy, but investing it into real estate, which is a very unproductive part of the economy. And one way to fix that is to redirect that away and encourage business to invest back into, more technological advances or whatever it may be. Is that going to be talked about? Did you guys get a sense that is that on the table?
I think the Prime Minister has made quite clear it's not on the table.
Yeah, I think some of the stakeholders are kind of talking about it because they comprehend that just talking about housing supply is only talking about one aspect of the problem, and we've covered this ground before. But I think the Prime Minister has made it clear that at this moment in time it's just politically too hard. And in that judgment, he's making the same judgment as just about all of his predecessors bar one. So
every successful predecessor.
Yes. So we shouldn't be too mean on him about that. But at this moment in time, it's a fantasy conversation about how supply, by fixing regulation, which is unquestionably a problem. Say as an owner builder, but it's only addressing one aspect of the problem. And there have been some good contributions made into this debate, but I don't see them translating into policy.
What is a win for the government at the end of this little Comic-Con of economic policy nerds? Jessie, to you first. What do you think looks like a win from a comms perspective?
To some extent, it depends what the objective is. If the objective is to genuinely have a conversation with a bunch of high-minded individuals about the future, there is no need for a comms outcome. We're very early in the government's life. If this is a way to bring people together and spark some good ideas and work on them and sort of announce them later, I think that in of itself is a success. I don't think the government has set out to suggest that this is going to be a big announcement at the end of it. I think that they have sort of approached it as a bit of a think tanky exercise. So in a comm sense, if the objective was to get to some sort of announceable, I don't think that's how it's been set up. I think it has been set up to have a deeper, longer conversation about things that they can do. It is an incubator for ideas. So I think the comms outcome of that will be in the 6-month time or the 3-month time where there is some tangible benefit from this that can be called back to this event.
David, what do you think success looks like for this get-together?
Well, earlier this month we had leaked Treasury advice setting out the list of possible outcomes for this summit. So we already know what the success looks like. Success looks like a plan to do something around AI, a plan to implement reforms that clear a backlog of 30,000 housing approvals currently being assessed by the EPA, and pausing changes to the National Construction Code. So I've got a pretty good hunch of what success looks like because the Treasury set it out for us.
Yeah, but it's interesting if the planning thing, like not just the EPA, but the planning thing suggests that the states should have been more central to this discussion. Like planning is a power that sits with them. And if that is one of the objectives.
And with councils.
Yeah, and with councils. Like, not that I would necessarily suggest bringing them into the room was the way forward, but like if that is one of the if that is the objective, far be it for me, but I suspect that some of the wrong people are in the room.
Jessie, do you remember when on the 2018 state campaign that I wanted to do a swear jar for the strategy meeting in the mornings, that if someone says the numbers are the numbers are the numbers, you got to put $5 in the bucket? I reckon they should do this for if anyone fucking mentions abundance or Ezra Klein at this event, but it's got to be, these people are rich, so it's not $5. It's got to be $100,000 or something. It might be good, sort of a tax revenue raising opportunity for the government as well.
I think the government can now go into prosecuting companies after Justice Lee's response. I think there's some cash to be made for the coffers there too.
Bloody oath.
As an interesting aside, talking to real people in my civilian life as a parent and citizen, I noticed a number of people have asked me whether death taxes are going to emerge out of this summit, which is an off-the-wall question, but it intrigued me in the sense
not
that
if you were treated during the federal campaign in 2020,
exactly.
2019. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That there's always internet underbellies rummaging around that we may not necessarily have line of sight to, which is spreading this kind of disinformation, this political disinformation. So keep a weather eye out for that one.
Mm-hmm. I will just point out that's as close as David has come to being in a focus group and saying, as a working mother.
I feel like that was a very gendered analysis of how our society operates, Jessie. Shocked that would come from you.
He's not really shocked.
Speaking of shocked, are we done with the round table? That's the most I've ever done.
It's not a round table. It's the cabinet table. It's oval. And where you sit on that table has been one of the media's little obsessions.
Oh, go on.
Who gets to sit where? Who's sitting next to Jim Chalmers? Who got the best seats? Who didn't get the best seats?
How many people fit around that table? There can't be that many people they've invited then.
They're like 30 or something. Well, there's lots of different sessions, but yes. But there's another little tale here that I wanted to share with you, which is I was watching the Liberal shadow treasurer, Ted O'Brien. That's Ted O'Brien because no one will have heard of Ted O'Brien. That's Ted O'Brien, who actually I shouldn't be too mean about because I think he's quite a bright and thoughtful guy. But he was on 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson, who I think has been quite grumpy since not winning the Logie because she's not inclined to let her guests finish their sentences anymore. Anyway, putting that to one side, Ted O'Brien was on and she asked him about the summit and his line was, I thought, a cracker, where he said, well, I'm going to be at the summit. I've been invited as the opposition to participate in the summit. I'll be at the summit and I'll be there representing everyone who didn't get invited and their views. And I thought, well, that's interesting. That's a big call, isn't it? And, of course, when pressed, he likes to talk about how profligate the government is, but as soon as he's asked a question about where he might identify savings, he clams up like a turtle. So the Liberal Party, we've got to remember in this debate we still have an opposition, small as it is, and it is really still trying to find its feet and work out what it's about. So these are still, some golden days for the Albo government. Big majority, dominating the conversation, a Liberal Party that's in multiple crises of different kinds. And with that context, you might wonder whether this summit is going to reach its potential. We don't know. It may, or whether it's going to be far more modest.
Ted O'Brien did say that the rate cut was a vote of no confidence in the government, so I think he's really nailing it right now.
Nailing it. Well, to be fair, he'll have to work very hard to be worse than his predecessor. He hasn't got his predecessor's hair, but if Ted O'Brien comes out with a single good line, he's ahead in that race.
No one's ever going to be as good looking as his predecessor. Let's remember that.
Yeah.
I do just want to touch on the catering because it was a long-running debate during budget lockups in our office about how much catering to provide. And the media team used to come in hot, being like, I don't care what we're cutting. We are keeping as much catering as we can. The journalists have to be happy. And after reading some of the coverage of this productivity roundtable,
it's fucking salada biscuits for them.
I have to tip my hat to the media team because the media are not happy with the austere offerings that they think speak to the core issues that everyone's discussing. There wasn't enough sandwiches. The tea was lukewarm.
Yep.
And I was like, well, you got to keep them happy. They're not going to write a story about how we're talking about economic conditions while serving frogois. Apparently, that's okay.
Yeah,
literally got to feed the beast.
He made that mistake, would he?
No.
Not with hair like that. All right. Let's. I can't believe we spent that much time on that particular topic. I literally thought that was going to be like a 7-minute, but there we go. Let's one more topic before we move into some comm stuff and some filibustering from David's. Recognition of Palestine happened this month. The federal Labor government have said that they will move to recognise a Palestinian state at the UN's General Assembly in New York later in September. I think that happens. To you, David, first of all, were you surprised by this announcement? What do you think politically was the reason why they made this announcement?
Yeah, well, I guess with the usual caveats, which is that I represent what is obviously a minority perspective within the Labor Party. This is a decision the government's made which is consistent with the National Conference resolution, the ALP National Conference resolution, so it's not really a great surprise. I do find it very, very despairing, and I don't feel the need to reventilate all of those arguments. I think it's an unhappy thing that one of the forces that welcomed the announcement was Hamas. I think the US has criticised the decision, but I think criticism coming from the Trump administration just washes over the government without causing too much concern. Australia here obviously acted in concert with Macron in France, Sir Keir Starmer in the UK with Canada and with others. And so we were sort of hunting in a pack. And I wonder if all of those countries have one thing in common, and to sort of paraphrase Melbourne academic Frank Knoffelmacher, and that is that they were pursuing domestic politics. This is domestic politics pursued by other means, foreign policy, because obviously it's a move that I think the government anticipated would be broadly popular with journalists and broadly popular with a segment of the population. And on that, I was interested to see a Fairfax piece came out on the 18th of August, which had done some polling concerning Australia's recognition of Palestine, and just it was interesting research. That 1,800 was the number of people surveyed, so it's a substantive poll, and it found that of 44% of Australians wanted no change, 32% of Australians said that Australia should wait until Hamas is replaced and or when Palestine considers recognising Israel's right to exist first. And only 24% said it was something that Australia should do. The numbers were a little different for Labor voters, a little different for Conservative voters in ways that you'd expect, and obviously for Green voters, wildly different. 48% of Green voters said get on with it straight away. So what that tells me is that the government, the journalists and the activists are quite a way ahead of the Australian population on this one. And that came as a happy surprise to me because we're so bombarded with the sort of misinformation, the statistics that come out of the Hamas health ministry in Gaza, that the debate is now so skewed that I was surprised that Australians have remained so impervious to that misinformation, a happy finding. So where does this lead? Well, I think the coalition have been, about as brave as they can be, but their utterances at this point in the political cycle count for little. The fact that the Trump administration is Israel's best friend doesn't do Israel any favours. The fact that Netanyahu is the Prime Minister of Israel is an unhappy thing for Israel in terms of its international standing. So, and the war grinds on. And Hamas continues to operate in a way where it sacrifices, as a matter of tactics and strategy, sacrifices its own civilian population to fuel international outrage against Israel, in the hope that the international community will eventually prevail on Israel to not win the war.
David, did you see the comments from one of the Israeli, or the main Israeli opposition leader, Yair Lapid, during the week after Netanyahu's attack on the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister? He's described it as a gift for Australia. He says the thing that strengthens a leader in the democratic world today most is a confrontation with Netanyahu. He's the most politically toxic leader in the Western world. I thought that was an interesting insight into sort of internal Israeli politics that they're talking about Australia in this.
But I'd offer up another insight, and that is, to some extent, Netanyahu and Anthony Albanese are doing the same thing, which is they're not really arguing with one another. It's performative for domestic audiences. And we've got to remember that's true for Netanyahu as well. By jumping up and down and championing, the visa applications of some of the more right-wing parts of the Israeli Knesset that sought to visit Australia, he's not trying to impress Australians. He's playing to domestic politics in Israel and holding together his Knesset coalition.
And it's more important he's more important to him domestically than it is to, a Prime Minister and his ascendancy here. It's far more important to Netanyahu to impress his domestic audience.
Foreign policy is domestic policy by other means for both of them.
Yeah.
One reflection that I took from it was, and to your initial point, David, that the Labor Party's federal platform is in support of a two-state solution, and it has been
and recognition of Palestine.
Yep, it has been for a number of years. That's always been the case, and I know that every national conference we tinker with it, and there's been sort of small motions around this and that, but broadly, it hasn't changed.
It's been fought over there.
And so the announcement really is essentially in line with the party platform.
It is.
Some of the leadership within the Free Palestine movement here in Australia, and this is also replicated across other parts of the Western world, their position is a one-state solution. And this is mostly emanating from the Trot element of the Free Palestine movement. They do not want a Jewish state. And what I thought was interesting was that when the Prime Minister made the announcement, if you looked on social media, lots of Labor politicians at a state and a federal level and lots of Labor Party activists proudly reshared, the tweet or the Instagram post of the announcement that the government was going to formally recognise the State of Palestine, and they did it from a place of pride, and I understand that. I get that. That makes sense to me. I wonder if they were shocked then to see the elements of the actual Free Palestine leadership come out publicly in the media and slam the announcement, saying that this is not what we care about. This is not what we want. And their campaign is very much targeting Israel, and what they say is the military occupation in Gaza. And they're trying to pressure Richard Marles.
There are two phenomena here, isn't there? The first is, while we like to pile pressure on Israel, people don't seem to remember that there is no partner for peace. At the moment, neither Hamas nor Fatah are willing to recognise Israel's existence. Both of them, there is no two-state. There's no partner for a two-state solution for Israel. Fatah is apparently the hope of the side, and President Abbas, who's in the 20th year of his 4-year term, that's a polity which is still using the monies given to it by Europe and others to pay stipends for suicide bombers. This is a very difficult organisation for us all to deal with. But I thought the other thing that was interesting was, as you say, as soon as Albanese and Wong had made this announcement about Australia joining with those international partners to recognise Palestine, a whole bunch of voices, including the Greens, came out and said, well, so what? Doesn't matter. What we actually need is sanctions. Like they're gonna put that in their pocket and move straight on to the next step in their campaign to demonise and delegitimise Israel, and they see it, I think, strategically as something akin to what happened to apartheid South Africa. That is to say, they're looking for a sanctions regime. They're looking for holistic economic, social, political, and military warfare against Israel, and recognising Palestine. As you say, Stephen, isn't going to satisfy anybody.
Yeah, and I guess the point I'm trying to make is that to our Labor, to all our comrades out there, you just need to be mindful that the trot element within this movement do not align with us on this particular issue. They want the eradication of the Jewish state. That is their end goal. That is not the position of the Labor Party, and so we just need to be a little bit careful in the way that we are engaging with the goals of this Free Palestine movement, because it doesn't necessarily align with ours. Anyway, Jessie, do you have any thoughts on that before we move to your comms breakdown for the week?
Well, I want to talk about the comms element of all of this, because I think that I was having a discussion with some friends ahead of the move from Albanese. There had been sort of ground softening happening about what Australia was going to do, and you're both correct. Like this is in line with the Labor Party's position, and it has long been the position of the Labor Party that a two-state solution is the right one, and therefore we all support the creation of a Palestinian state. I think
recognising it before it comes into existence is a bit of a stretch, but anyway.
Sorry, recognise it. Yes. So, and I think this is the core point that I'm going to make about the communications. When you are making, as a leader, when you are making a change of position or trying to explain the position you're in, it is always important to explain what's changed and how that change has impacted why the party is going in a different direction or the government is moving. I found that explanation a little bit wanting in this communications exercise. I don't think the government did an amazing job of explaining the state change that explains why Australia is going to change their vote at the UN. I think that it felt very vibey. I think the explanation that the Palestinian Authority is going to sort of not be anti-Israel, it's not enough, and I can understand why many are sceptical that if those actions haven't been taken and we recognise Palestine, what is the remedial action if they don't live up to those commitments? And I can appreciate that people are like, well, I'd like to see those commitments actioned before we recognise Palestine. So I think in a communications sense, there wasn't enough to explain to either side why this decision has been made now and what it actually means about where Australia stands in all of this. I don't think that was brilliantly well done.
Well, and Jessie, you made another point off camera too, which I think is really significant, and that is that this sucked up a lot of media from the government's summit and became a bigger story than the government's economic reform message.
Yeah, and Netanyahu will lead the news tonight, no doubt. And Tony Burke's comments today similarly will feature a lot higher in the news than anything about productivity.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like when doing research for today's episode and I was trying to get some stuff, it was bloody hard to find reporting on the economic summit. And it was all
why Sarah Ferguson and Ted O'Brien became one of the
Well, you've missed the part about the catering.
yes. Well,
I did. I don't know. Clearly your research skills are far better than mine, though, Jessie. All right, very good. Let's go to communication breakdown with Jessie McCrone. Jessie, this is your opportunity to give us a bit of a overview of some things that have been interesting to you over the month in terms of political communication. I'm desperate to hear what you got to talk about this week.
So there is a monthly that's coming out or has come out which I haven't read it. I should be very clear before we launch into this that I haven't actually read the offending article. The title is, forgive me if I'm wrong
You've
here.
probably got some staffer somewhere preparing you an executive summary, do you?
No. Look, it involves paying for it, and frankly, I'm just not going to do that. But the headline is the key point here, and I believe the headline is "Why No One Likes Richard Marles." Yes.
Yeah.
That's. So
and then underneath that, so how did he get so powerful? ?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I reflected this week on the journey that the poor media advisor in Richard's office has gone through. So for those of you that haven't had to deal with something like this before, you get a call or you don't get a call from a journalist who's doing a long read on your boss, and you get a call from some other people that they've been talking to, and you have to decide how are you engaging with this long read. Are you going to try and push as many positive speakers to talk to them as you can? Are you officially going to engage? Are you going to ask for an interview? How are you going to manage this? And the media advisor, I imagine, is saying to Richard, I've got, blah talking to them. We think it's evening up the story. They've got some good feedback from the journalist. Don't worry, no one reads the monthly. This is not going to be a story that really impacts you.
Yeah, well, that would be my advice.
And that is going to be the back and forth that's happening. And we'll do a couple of puff pieces at the same time. We've organised, and they've done a good job, we've organised The Age to do an odd spot sort of the two of us with your son. It's a beautiful story for those that haven't read it, about him watching his son in a fight the night of the election. We're going to do some evening up of the PR here. And then they've got the headline of this article. And the poor bastard has been like, how am I going to go in and tell the Deputy Prime Minister that the headline is, why does no one like you? And to some extent, it doesn't matter what's in the article after that. That is just such a character assassination. And as the media advisor, you're like, what do I do about this? There's nothing I can do. I'm just going to be hit over the head about the fact that this journalist has decided to character assassinate my boss. And my heart goes out to them, whoever they are. I think that it probably has been a challenging time. And as anyone that has dealt with a journalist doing a long read on their boss, that is a headline that is very hard to smooth over.
It's written by Martin Mackenzie Murray, which is a name that sounds like he's a back rower for the Wallabies and the Waratahs. Anyway.
Well, given these names hyphenated, I'd suspect he's a Green. And he writes for the Monthly, so I think my case is building.
Well, Did you get a call, David?
No, I didn't. So maybe they didn't know it was coming. Maybe the journalist didn't want to reach out to people who like Richard.
Yes,
well, I was ruined the hypothesis.
This is what I'm saying. So I have previously called David and said, someone's writing a long read on insert person. Can you call them and give them your views? So my heart goes out to them. There's not much you can do to manage that headline, but I am sure they've done everything they can to mitigate the damage.
It says from skeptics both within the caucus and outside it that warmth, so Richard's warmth, is described as well practiced to better conceal a forked tongue and prodigious ambition.
Well,
David, you know Richard.
I regard myself as a very dear friend of his, and these hatchet jobs just get done from time to time, don't they? Why now? I could draw up a short list of people who.
Well, you know why now, Stephen, but go on, David.
Well, I mean, I think there's a few things going on. The first thing is, in the immediate aftermath of the reshuffle, there was obviously some bad blood, and a few people want to stitch up Richard for that. He's got enemies inside the Labor Party, and they want to ventilate their views. And then he's got competitors who are not necessarily his enemies, and that with one eye on the future, you'll watch some of these characters try and muddy each other up as they sail forth into the glorious future, because one day perhaps there'll be a search for a new leader. Long way away. I'm pleased. There are 93 reasons in the House of Representatives. That's a long way away. But well, it might be more than 93 now. I think
it's 96 reasons.
Oh, well, there you go, 96 reasons. So that's it. It's jockeying for power, and the fact that it's happened in such a niche publication, I think, tells the story really. And so Bufton Tufton or Martin Mackenzie Murray or whoever it was who wrote it, like, never heard of him. Who cares?
Thank you, Jesse. David, to you. Time for Feeney's filibuster.
Okay, well, there was a little story that I really enjoyed. As you know, when we came back for this glorious parliament, one of the things Prime Minister Albanese did was a little bit like he did in 2022, is he came in with some changes to staff allocations for crossbenchers and opposition MPs, which I think we're all greeted with shock and horror by those forces, as usual, because the Teals think they should have more staff than any other member of the House of Representatives because they're special, and the opposition wanted to have a lot of staff, notwithstanding the fact that their parliamentary caucus had just been cut in half. But putting that to one side, there was another interesting part of this story, which goes to the generosity of our Prime Minister. And that is that he provided the Greens with a new party room. They got a new party room. Even though they'd lost members, the Prime Minister, feelings regarding the Greens, some might describe as mean. I would describe as mainstream. The Prime Minister provided the Greens with a brand new party room for them to play in. And of course, they loved it. They all rushed in and filled it with whatever it is they fill their party room with. But when this attracted some media attention and the media turned up to see their new party room, they turned green, didn't they? They were furious. And so not only did they berate the various media outlets that turned up to look at their new shiny built room, but they lodged a complaint with the presiding officers of the Parliament saying it was illegal for the media to march around the Parliament looking at their shiny new. And so they've lodged a complaint, and the presiding officers are now going to have to deal with the complaint concerning media filming in parts of the Parliament that are not usually part of the universe that gets watched on camera. So I thought an interesting little story about how the party that says it's for transparency, the party that says it's for more open government, is also the party that still has closed conferences, secretive decision-making, expels people from its ranks from a star chamber that's not subject to any kind of review, and wants to now meet in secret in its shiny new offices in Canberra. And while they insist on berating others for excess and enjoying the trappings of power, it seems like they're a little partial to those things themselves.
Very, very good, David.
Can I ask if this banning on filming, does it extend to the MPs themselves? Because I might be for it, because I've seen some of the videos that are coming out.
No, but it just gets so yes, in theory, when one is a federal MP, in theory, when you come out of your office looking stressed and bedraggled, there's not meant to be someone there with a camera. They're not allowed to film in those places in Parliament, but they do. They just do. Because they're the media and they don't believe in rules, They all think they're little Che Guevaras, and so they run up and down with their cameras trying to film us at our moments of maximum distress and unhappiness, and this is no exception. This is what they've done here. They will roam around with a camera irrespective of the rules. And presiding officers might give them a slap or send them another rude letter, but nothing happens.
Let's go to categories, because I know that we've all got to get moving in a couple of minutes to our other meetings.
I don't. This is the centre of my universe, Stephen. I don't want to do anything else.
The children can pick themselves up.
The children can pick themselves up from school.
Tory the typewriter, we obviously did Andrew, we did Murray, Mackenzie, McPherson, McWatson. Any other nominations for Tory with the typewriter or Tory with the typewriter this week, folks?
No, it's been really hard. The Liberals aren't even giving them anything to coalesce around right now.
Mel Meninga, In Over My Head Award. Jesse, you got one for this week.
The Victorian state rounds. I think they're way in over their head on SRL now because even the Liberal Party isn't opposing it, and they are not going to know what to do. They've absolutely been against this thing for so long, and they've been able to hook that against the fact that the opposition are against it. And there's this fight. For those of you who aren't in Victoria and are obsessed with this, as I am, the former leader of the Liberal Party, current opposition spokesman for public transport.
Public transport.
Has said that if there are tunnels built for SRL when they get to government, they will not
They're going to fill them in.
Although he said obviously filling them in is stupid. Yes, it is. But there are going to be tunnels built by the time. So basically now the Liberal Party has finally agreed with the rest of Victoria that this project stacks up and it needs to be done. The question is what are the media going to do about this? Because they're so keen to oppose it. But as someone said to me...
And if I catch Damon Johnson going down one of those tunnels, holy dolly.
He'll only go one of the tunnels to surveil someone more closely. He made this announcement on Raf's Change My Mind episode live that he did earlier in the week. Changed my mind to SRL, and as someone quipped to me, I don't think Raf thought that the politicians sitting under the sign was going to change their mind about SRL, but what a coup for him.
I'm going to tell you something that I'm sure you know really well already, Jessie, but a friend of ours, a mutual friend, recently got to see all of these new constructions up close as part of the process of making final evaluations before they become open to the public. And he told me on the QT, they're amazing. Apparently they are amazing.
I have been fortunate enough
that when voters get in there and realise, they're going to go, holy shit, Batman, this is amazing.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to go down the tunnels at different points in my former life, and they are amazing. That was before even like the
before they'd been finished.
Livery, the livery has been added. Yeah. So I am very excited. And anyway, I think the journos are now in over their head. They're not going to know what to do.
Back to dredging, I think. Back to Port Phillip dredging. There's still causes that they need them.
Let's move to probably answerable questions. One that I've got is, and just popped up again in the news today, when will the legal cases inside the Victorian Liberals cease? 5 members of their party's administrative committee have launched a Supreme Court challenge over the $1.5 million loan approved to bail out their ex-leader John Pesutto, and that money was used to help him pay off the $2.3 million legal debt to his colleague Moira Deeming following a defamation case he lost. So this story just continues to kick along down the road. When is this going to end, David?
This is so resign now. Victorian Liberals boss demands that rivals quit. For all of those people who were suggesting that the Allen government would be on its final legs by this point in the political cycle, I don't know who they thought was going to do the damage to them, because it wasn't the Liberal Party, was it? I can't believe the Liberal Party is still doing this. So a new round of bloodletting, a group that as if they haven't, they're just going to have to set up a permanent embassy down at the Supreme Court, aren't they? They're in there so often. And $1.5 million that was given to John Pesutto on commercial terms, which frankly I think is of itself outrageous, was apparently still too generous as far as some Tories are concerned. And as you say, Stephen, they're taking them to court. Just incredible that these guys are utterly determined to wage their war irrespective of what's going on in the broader community. And the Allen government using the time well. Yesterday, I'm pleased to say, Premier Allen came and visited the most important polling place in Australia, the West Garth Primary School, to open a new building at the kids' school. And, to paraphrase Jessie, as a working mum, I was there. And my kids loved it. And I can tell you, when Jacinta Allen came in and began her address, the kids went bananas. It was like Elvis had arrived, except none of them would know who Elvis was. But you take my point. We needed to have a snap poll right then. It would have been over. It would have been Romanian. It would have been 110%. So while she's getting on with the job and travelling around and visiting key officers of the party, like the West Garth Primary School booth captain. We've got the Tories wandering down to the Supreme Court for their latest action. Just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and I think that I would really take that point. I think the government and the Premier have done a phenomenal job of taking the opportunities that the Liberals just keep providing them, and instead of obsessing over the Liberals' court cases, they are coming out with significant announcements and policies, and like the work from home stuff has been phenomenally popular and was executed on their timeline, while having the space to think and do those things while Liberals are tearing themselves apart.
A great point. And I thought it was when the policy was announced, we saw all sorts of crusty old skeptics come out and say, well, we don't need this and the Victorian government doesn't have the power and blah, blah, blah. But who was silent on it? The Victorian bloody opposition. They didn't know whether to come or go, whether Arthur or Martha. So just
don't ask me.
That's what our view is. The only people who didn't enter the debate were those paid to do so.
And it's just such a good reaffirming message for the government to just continue to be proactive in that space because, one, it does great things for them in terms of the relationship with the voting public, but it also throws that cat amongst the pigeons internally within the Liberal Party because they don't know how to respond. Because are we just going to be the opposition or are we going to agree with them? We can't agree with them. What do we do with agree with them? They're just absolutely in sixes and sevens over this.
And full credit to the government as well. Last week in Parliament, they just absolutely nailed the Libs to the wall on work from home. I know all of you will have been watching Question Time religiously in the the Victorian State Parliament, but they were executing the message. They've pulled together a bunch of events. Like, this is how you communicate. They're doing a phenomenal job.
Indeed. And if you missed our exclusive interview with Premier Jacinta Allen last week on the pod, please go and take a listen. It was a great episode.
Look at that communication strategy. As I said, I congratulate them on these kind of decisions they're making about comms. They've come on the podcast.
Obviously, no matter how small the audience, they're ready to reach out to them.
Bloody oath. Leave no stone unturned, David. That's how you win elections. Vote after vote after vote, even though everyone that listens to this show has clearly got to vote for the Labor Party anyway. David Feeney, thank you very much for your time on this month's episode of the Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone.
A pleasure to appear on the McCrone Memorandum again as a guest on what was once my own show. Terrific to be here.
And
always great to talk to you, Doctor.
And Jessie McCrone, thank you so much for your time on the Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone. And to the people out there, you don't understand technically how difficult this episode was, and it's going to be a nightmare for Grace to cut. But we got there in the end. This episode was cursed, but I hope you all enjoy. Thanks very much for listening. We'll talk to you all guys next week.
Hasta la vista.
Hey, Social Democrats. Thanks for listening. Today's episode was hosted by myself, Stephen Donnelly, and produced by Grace Eyre. Big thank you to Fiona Ward, almost called you Darwin there, Sam and Kayleen for subscribing to Patreon. Members of our Socially Democratic Patreon community get ad-free episodes earlier than when they drop to everyone else on the Friday, and they get first dibs when sending in their questions and category nominations for our Feeney Files with Jessie McCrone episode. Plus, certain Patreon levels get Socially Democratic merch as well. So if you want to join our community, then you can do so at patreon.com/socially democratic or check the links in the show's notes. And it's been really great over the course of the last 6 months to see how many people have signed up to our Patreon community. So we're incredibly grateful for the support that you have given us. And we obviously encourage others that love the show to support the show by becoming a member of our Patreon community. And finally, a shout out to our Labor comrades in Wellington, New Zealand. Dunn Street was over in the capital for some meetings over the weekend and early this week. And we just wanted to say thanks to everyone out there in Wellington for your gracious hospitality, but also supporting the podcast as well. We really do appreciate our cousins across the ditch. So thanks so much. See you next Friday.